right, thank you. So welcome everybody to our April, it is a March, excuse me, wow. March, geez, Philly grid call. Happy St. Patrick's Day and March Madness to all of you. I'm really excited for today. We have one of my good friends and first contacts in the real estate industry on the investor side. We'll get to that. Tyler Small. Tyler is correct me if I'm wrong, co-founder, co-owner, however you want to say it, at Axe Philly. Tyler and Andrew Yeager run a very cool business as licensed contractors, licensed realtors, a lot of buy and hold, a lot of flipping, started out as wholesalers, which is how we met. So Tyler can answer questions just about everywhere. Tyler, on a personal level, I will say, is one of the very few people who I think is genuine to the go-giver and abundance mindset that this industry lacks across the board. So I knew Tyler would be a perfect person for us to have on here today. So Ty, anything about yourself or Axe you want to mention before we dive into some questions?
No, I mean, I think that was a great intro. I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I mean, we're a 5-year-old company. We kind of got into real estate on accident. Andrew and I had invested some money from a previous business into a deal because we thought, being investors in a real estate deal sounded cool. And the guy that was running the deal, like, totally went sideways. It was a huge mess, and we were kind of forced to step in and take it over and like finish it out. And we got some help from a couple guys in the Philly, real estate space to kind of mentor us to finish that project. We were looking for like a career change at the time. We ended up teaming up with them to like do their acquisitions and like find them new deals while they were helping us get out of this flip. And that's kind of where we got into the wholesaling stuff, as Todd mentioned. And, that was just kind of the spark once we had enough capital and experience of the neighborhoods and enough of a network. We just got into flips and have grown it from there.
Yeah, and Tyler and I met. I bought my first ever rental property from Tyler and his previous company, and Tyler made an amazing $500 assignment fee. So we can certainly relive that if you want.
Yeah, that might be. It might have been less.
Yeah, it might have been. All right. Well, the topic today is estimating budgets for rehabs and construction and pretty high level. And I think Tyler's great to speak on that because as the contractor, as the investor, and as somebody who flips, you kind of have to think of, well, what's a buyer going to look for? How can I keep this within budget? How can we also make money? And with the rising cost of materials, there's no easy way to do that. So first, when you walk into a project that you are thinking about purchasing, either to hold or to flip or to develop, are there 2 or 3 things that when you see this, you're like, absolute deal breaker, I look for these first when I walk into a house?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a hard question to answer because, one of our mentors once told us, like, we were asking him about like a construction scope, like, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? And they were like, well, you can do anything. It's just at what cost, So you kind of have to answer that question with like your target budget in mind. We always will walk into a deal kind of with a general sense of like what we want to do with it and what budget is going to make it work. We've backed into that based on what the goal is for the deal, if it's a flip, a hold, or whatever. And then obviously what's the ask price? And then what do we think it's worth when it's done? You can kind of back into, a general construction number. So, I guess I would say structure is huge because those are like really big ticket items, especially if like, main exterior walls have to come down or something. And I don't know who all is on the call and from what markets. Obviously Philly's, unique in some ways that might be different to other markets. But, if there's major structural challenges, it's going to add time to the project. It's going to add headaches, and there's something to be said for that. It's going to add cost, obviously, and more commonly than other issues that can blow up a deal. And then also like I typically say, like, foundation work which is sort of structural in a way, or can be, but also exterior work we've seen can be really pricey really fast. So like, Todd, you and I were catching up earlier today. You mentioned Sartain Street. I'm sure we'll get more into that, but like that exterior was in really good shape. And sometimes you just get lucky like that. And, we hardly had to spend any money out there. So we've seen where we've underestimated the exterior work on deals, and it's blown our budgets out of the water.
Yeah, and sorry, just to dissect it, so we're keeping it at a low level, that would be like just basic brick repointing. If the rear yard has to have new concrete and a new fence, the basement slab, I agree with you. Those kind of things for buy and hold or flip, it's incredible how that can add to the cost and add to it quickly. So if you get that and it's in decent shape, I'm assuming that's what you're saying. We can kind of move from there.
Yeah, totally. The basement pad, like what's your plan for the basement? Do you want to finish it? Do you want to float a floor down there? What condition is the pad? Does the pad have to be replaced? That opens a whole can of worms with the code and, needing to dig deep enough to replace the pad, to the proper.
Do you think you could, and I know it's hard, but could you determine do you look for cracks in the basement floor or the walls if they're not fully parged? Is that how you would determine that?
As far as which part again? Just
for the basement slab in particular, whether it's foundational or it's going to be added cost for flat work or whatever.
I mean, yeah, it's really just like how patchy is it? Can you see dirt? Can you see where it's like a half an inch of concrete or something?
Okay.
And then how like wavy is it?
Sure.
Is it nice and straight? Even if it's pitched like back to front, which we see in Philly a lot, that's not the end of the world.
Right.
If it's got an even pitch, if you just want to, some of the lower end renovations we're doing, like we're just putting a floor and drywall down there and leaving the ceiling open. It doesn't have to be perfect, but yeah, that stuff can add up really quick. Parging a basement, it's $5,000, boom,
Yep.
And it's a silly item and it's easy to overlook, but
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Just to pivot, if we may, we all here, especially in this group, talk a lot about the unbelievable cost of materials these days, not just lumber, which we can talk about for an hour, but how do you offset that when you're doing your rehab while trying to be conscious of, to get top dollar, we must achieve this? Do you offset it by maybe doing a little less, trying to be more disciplined with your layout? Does that make sense?
It does. It's hard to say. I mean, we got our GC license as just a way to offset that, among many other things, being able to kind of cut out that general contractor fee. The pricing is so hard to keep up with too, because it's changing so rapidly. So at a point, we're kind of just like, if we sit and stare at the charts of lumber prices and stuff all day, like we're not going to get anything done at the property. So at a point, we're kind of just taking it on the chin a little bit too. Like, I don't know if that's a great answer, but like, we're not letting it slow us down totally. Thankfully, like, the real estate market has been hot and the prices, we've kind of seen it equal out on the back end. I'm not saying it will remain that way forever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also kind of like a supply demand thing. Like,
Yep.
Inventory is very low. These lumber companies or whatever, think that they can charge more because builders are paying it.
Right.
Because, the investment, the house flipping and stuff is very profitable right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one trick that you and I might have talked about, or I might have mentioned on this call, is if you're doing a buy and hold, a flip, you have to be a little bit more mindful. But if you don't change the footprint on the second floor, if your bedrooms are a decent size, if you can squeeze closets in and keep a bathroom nice, it's incredible. You could save maybe more than $5,000 instantly. Any tricks or anything like that you keep in your back pocket, mainly for your buy and holds, that is helpful to mention today?
Definitely. Yeah. If you can get something that is in good shape, and there's things that you can save, like you mentioned, the layout, it can get a little tricky at times. For example, one thing, a lot of these old homes have like old 2x3 framing. Yep. Instead of a 2x4. So
can't hang a door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get some fatter trim or something. on one side. But I mean, you're totally right. Like if you are not demoing exterior walls, you know, in Philly, they will then allow you to not have to insulate those walls. You know, that's a small savings. You know, you can definitely find those little tricks. And, you know, one other thing that kind of answers your last question is like using cheaper finish material. And I don't mean cheaper as in like bad quality, but like, you know, subway tile, for example. But we'll put like a fun flair on it where we'll like do a herringbone pattern on a back wall of the tub. And like, you know, you can give creativity even with less expensive things and lower budgets. You know, paint is a great way to stand out and to, you know, make something pop. And you're painting the house regardless, so just change the color and you know that goes a long way. You don't have to use crazy expensive finishes to make something stand out.
Yeah, I think for sure. And I think to your point, one of the things I've admired most about your flips and when I got to represent you as a seller would be how unique you can be without being obnoxious or gaudy. I think is probably a better word. I mean, and I'm going to bring up the pictures of Sartain Shoot in a minute, but that was a deal I found off market, brought to Tyler and Andrew to flip, and they did an amazing job. But like there were colors in there that I would never think, and I can't. And I, from what I know, you didn't go insane with the budget. You were just able to get creative with what you had at your disposal. Other than finishes, before we get into some projects, are there anything? Is there anything, excuse me, about the house design itself that you believe is important that you can properly estimate your budget up front? I can dissect that question if you need to a little more.
Yeah. What exactly do you mean, like from a budget standpoint?
Yeah. So for example, when you walk into a house for the first time, right, and you're going to do the on your hand the estimated cost. Other than the finishes, where do you believe you have full control to estimate your budget? If that, sorry if I'm not being clear, if that makes sense.
I mean, I don't know if I'm fully understanding the question. Like we use a lot of our recent projects and tracking the cost to be able to estimate that type of stuff.
Okay. So you figure if you did it at project A, it'll be similar to project B. The only thing difference might be square footage, or if there's an extra bathroom, that'll be a small cost.
Yeah. I guess, you know, a helpful tip, like we're very, very anal about tracking every penny. You know, kind of have to be with the way our accounting software is set up. But you know, we actually go back every time we finish up a project and we run a report, and we'll kind of extract the data from like our QuickBooks, and we'll organize it in such a way that we can see where money was spent, where we overshot, you know, what we actually did for like what, you know, for less than we would have thought. And we kind of like have that as like a rolling metric of being able to, you know, to use on every new project.
Yeah, that I think is great when you can get to that level, right? You can walk into a house and say, based off my experience, demo and clean out should be X, and to reframe this is going to be Y. But when you first started, you were first doing it. Was there anything that you did to be disciplined, to not say our budget here is 100 grand and now we're at 175 just because we got carried away? Is there anything that you did other than the quality of finishes, which you're not going to waver on, to keep yourself within that budget?
I guess I would say, you know, if you're on the newer side, like we, you know, you that's when we did have GC partners, you know, and we were, you got to be conservative. That, I guess that's a short answer, like highly, you know, and a lot of deals may not work, but you're not going to get smoked, you know, on the first deal you snatch up because you were too eager, which is exactly what happened to us on our first deal. And you underestimate stuff. But yeah, having some type of like partner or mentor in the beginning is critical. Being able to lean on their experience and helping build out the budget.
Yeah, I think that's the bedrock of grid here, and just bigger pockets, whatever you would do. The Philadelphia investor listserv that I got thrown on, like no matter what it is, I'm always amazed. And again, I mentioned this about you earlier, how willing other investors are to help investors. And I think that is unbelievably important moving forward. And I do want to make sure we're mindful to spend a couple minutes talking about some of your projects, why you did what you did, and how you ended up there. So let me.
Todd, I want to jump in with just a question for Tyler. Tyler, is it fair to say that if you're going to really be involved in this sphere, that you just got to be prepared to lose money on a couple of them? Because I kind of feel like I haven't worked with a single investor who hasn't at least broke even or gone into the red a couple of times. Like that's just the nature of the beast. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear. Thank you.
Unfortunately, you're going to have to pay the tuition.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we're going to look at Sartain Street, and I'll be very, open book here. Our pro forma did not look anywhere near as hot as, or our pro forma, I'm sorry, looked way hotter than, our actual profit at the end of the day. And I could get into, some of the reasons why, however much you guys want. I'm an open book. Anyone can hit me up whenever. We've had so much great mentorship. We try to give it back where we can,
Yeah, I can personally say without you and Andrew, not only your support and this ability to vent to you, but you kind of push the bar. Like, Todd, you're thinking of 1 rental a year. Cool, but why not 3? Why not 5? And just to have somebody else say that, it does broaden your thinking. So let's get into Sartain Street specifically, just to remind everyone, this was a deal that I found off market, brought to Tyler and Andrew to flip. And the seller was a character. This whole thing was great. But really, Tyler, I want to show you the before and after photos. And if you could just give a 1 minute for each of why you did the layout you did, some of the finishes you did, but mainly how you were able to price that up front. I think that would be very helpful. So the first one, main level. This was standing in like where the kitchen used to be, looking towards the front door. What was the thought process here?
I mean, you can see Andrew standing there. That's funny.
Yeah.
We had, I think that might have been a drop ceiling, but obviously we gutted it all. We kept the staircase, which was a savings. So that's something that we look for. If the stairs are nice and straight and sturdy, then we'll try to keep them and refinish them. But there definitely is a fine line between, doing that and actually it costing more time and energy than to just rip them out and have them be new, because they're not super expensive. But
yeah, same with the window, if I remember correct, in the windowsill.
Exactly. Yeah, that window is actually kind of cool. It's like the old wood window with the fixed glass that we just painted. So that was a small savings. So we look for those little things. But yeah.
I think too, my favorite feature in this house on this level was the herringbone flooring that you did. I don't know, is that like an egregiously expensive cost versus just standard hardwoods, or were you able just to fit it in the budget?
Maybe that's not appropriate for this call because it was pretty pricey, but we've never tried it and we've always wanted to. So, that one's on us.
Right.
It was maybe like $7 or $8 a foot, probably double what hardwood, but we didn't do it throughout the whole house.
Yes.
We matched a much less expensive hardwood upstairs that was close enough for you to not know the difference to that on the first floor. So again, kind of a creative way to like make it pop, but not like totally destroy the budget.
Sure.
We mix the floors.
Very fair. The kitchen, verbally, I'll say it was a 3-tone kitchen. Correct me if I'm wrong. Black, blue, and white. There's 3 different color cabinets. You did some shiplap in there. I believe this is called waterfall granite right here. Isn't that right? Where it comes down the side. So what was the thought process here? And is it fair to say that the kitchens are far and away the most expensive part of in front of the drywall rehab?
Yeah. I mean, you can go crazy with kitchens. I mean, this doesn't even like touch the surface on like what some appliance packages cost,
Right.
or 3-4 times what this whole kitchen costs. But yeah, I mean, just another, to your point, like those blue cabinets aren't much more than the white ones, but they bring a really unique, kind of, it stands out. And we've always wanted to mix the blue with that black. I still don't know if I love it, but I think it's cool. We try something new on every job. We're very willing to kind of try new things. And, the shiplap is not very expensive.
Yeah, and that's just so you guys can see, that's the wood on the wall here, rather than just doing standard drywall.
Yeah, and then we paint it black. So again, an inexpensive way to make something pop. The floating shelves are from IKEA. They're like $40 a pop, and you actually save money by not putting cabinets on that wall. And we gave cabinets on the other side, which we probably don't have a photo of, surrounding the range. And we did like a floor to ceiling pantry there to kind of make up for the lack of cabinets on the other wall.
Now, when you walked into Sartain and you were standing, if I remember correctly, in the dining room that had that weird dividing wall between the dining room and the kitchen, was your initial thought like the biggest bang we're going to have to spend on is opening up this first floor, building out a smoking hot kitchen? Because when you walk into a South Philly row house, your eyes go right to the back where the kitchen always is.
Yeah, totally. The kitchens and baths are what sell the houses. I'm sure the realtors on the call would attest to that. But yeah, I mean the layout too. It was kind of tight, so we stayed with like a galley kind of feel, but we did the little tiny breakfast bar just to give you some extra seating. So,
can you talk about the thought process upstairs as to how you laid out? Remember, we talked about the skylight, how that was the focal point, and how you built out and ended up with a bathroom like this one that we're looking at.
Yeah, this was kind of cool, and another example of using existing conditions to make something a little creative. There was like a skylight in the existing house that was part of this bathroom. You can actually see it on the left above that like green glass in the before photo. But so we left the skylight and we totally redesigned the whole second floor. If you could picture, the second floor was wide open when we gutted the house. We totally redesigned every inch of the second floor layout around that skylight because it had to be perfectly centered underneath our new shower, which was like a cave style shower, where you kind of walk in and it's tiled on all four walls. So it kind of feels like you're in a cave with this skylight and like the rain shower head, like floating right underneath the skylight. It just created like a really cool aesthetic. But it was cool to be able to use that existing condition to our advantage. And then we were able to design the whole rest of the second floor, 2 bedrooms, another bathroom, linen closet, etc. After, painting on the floor exactly where the shower was going to go.
Yeah, it's cool when you can see the process start to finish. One question about the budget specifically. How much would you say, what percentage, and not numbers wise, would you say your budget is spent on the right side of the drywall, the kitchens and bathrooms, versus closet doors and all the stuff that does that up? But how much do you factor for when you're doing your proposals for yourself, what you're going to spend on a kitchen or bathroom?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking really quick numbers, I would say like between 15 and 20%.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, I think the basement's super important because you finished this, but you kind of didn't at the same time with the way you left this beam out here. And we don't have the other photo, but some stuff in the back where you didn't go crazy by hiding all the mechanicals with walls. Why did you finish this basement? How much extra did it cost you? And do you, within reason, believe you got that back on the sale?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what was unique about this house is, so talking about basement pads, the existing pad that was down there, we knew we wanted to finish it a little bit. To what extent, maybe we didn't know at the time, but the pad was like, it was like this. It was like a mountain. It was like a big hump. So clearly we couldn't lay a floor on that. So there was actually like a bench footing like that was already designed around the whole perimeter. So we were really lucky. You don't typically see that. But it allowed us to replace the pad and actually go down a little bit deeper to maintain the same ceiling height by the time we dug down, to the bottom of the footer and then re-poured the new pad to the code standard, which is like 8 inches. We ended up with good ceiling height. And at that point we were like, let's just drywall the ceiling, because that's always the goal. But sometimes, it's a little tight in these Philly homes. It's a little short. We leave the ceilings open because you save a couple dollars and it gives this like illusion that it's a little bit, more open. But
yeah. And you also, the last thing we'll talk about with Sartain is you did a really nice job of, it's a smaller house. You added some living space. And by not putting a closet around the HVAC system or the washer dryer or the water heater, it felt very open. And, we talked about that. That could be an office or a kid's playroom, and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind down there. And this was the perfect rehab. And if you guys want to see, can share the before and after, and even the old listing photos, which will help if you want to see it.
Todd, I want to jump in because you touched on something that I was thinking too. When I'm advising investors on finishing lower levels, a lot of times we'll just evaluate, oh, the ceilings are high enough, let's finish the basement, and I think you can be a lot more surgical than that. I always like to think, is the above grade living space, the living room, is it sufficient for the number of people in the house, right? Sometimes there's more than enough living space, in which case, why spend the extra money to finish the lower level? Sometimes there's not nearly enough, right? You've got a really tiny living room, 3 bedrooms upstairs. In that case, I feel like adding that extra square footage becomes almost critical, not only to getting the highest value, but to selling the house at all. So, I would advise any investors or agents, as you're analyzing these things, to really think about the functional utility of the existing space and whether or not it's going to add value or even be necessary to add extra square footage below grade.
I think that's a perfect point. Anybody have any questions for Tyler? I want to be sensitive to the time and make sure we leave some time for networking. Any questions in the chat? Or anybody want to unmute themselves?
Hey, Tyler, this is Connor. I'm with WCP, hard money lender, from doing things up and down the East Coast. What's the number one thing that you look for when you walk into a building for the first time?
I'm probably, when I'm walking into a house, I'm always looking at the front of the building, to look for like major bowing, major cracking. Goes back to the structural thing. Are there star bolts? Has there been problems previously? I love to look for level floors when I go in, because that's will indicate if there's, routing joists and, a number of other problems. But if the floors are all nice and level, the staircase is like nice and level and solid, it's amazing how much that will say about the the overall house,
Yep.
how someone has taken care of it. So that's probably the number one thing. And then just the space, kind of to Matt's point, like how functional is it? Is it full width all the way, or does it have the cut in, that you see in a lot of these Philly homes with the little alley in the backyard? How big is the second floor? Can it be a 3-bed, 2-bath, or does it have to be a 2-bed, 2-bath? Like looking at the comps, like Matt was talking about. So
Yeah.
probably layout and functionality.
And that's one of the biggest things, especially for new investors, because as new investors, we don't generally recommend trying to really open up a ton of walls or adding square footage. It's really about gaining that experience and getting in and getting out, and then keeping track of the numbers like you already do, so that moving forward where your pricing should be in terms of dollar per square foot. And one further question, back of the napkin way that we teach people how to evaluate a quick deal is ARV times 80% minus construction costs equals what you should be purchasing the property at. However, since it's such an easy formula, you can change that number around. Are you ever looking at, okay, this is what the offer price is, and this is what I think we're going to be able to sell it for in the area, and then try to make your construction budget work based on that?
Yeah, totally. I guess one thing I've learned, I might argue with you that that's like overly simplified, and I totally agree with it. For quick back of napkin, like you said.
Yeah.
But like in our experience, our little pro forma, we have kind of like a bigger one and a little one that we just built in like a Google sheet. It's nothing crazy, but like our little one has evolved over the years, because every single time we look back on a project, we're like, all these little fees add up, the Pico bills and the insurance and, the closing costs when you sell the place. And, so when you say the 80% minus, you know, the construction, like that's leaving you with an offer figure. You also got to factor in the title insurance and like, you know, some
Yeah,
of those.
this is for sitting at a bar with somebody. Does this
Totally.
deal-
Connor, it's like 70% in Philly. The transfer tax here is like the highest in, I think, North America.
I think you're right.
Perhaps like the planet. So you gotta build in a little bit more buffer, but
Yeah, totally. But I mean, it's a great, that is the right formula, but you know, I might just say like, you know, go a
A
little
little
more.
bit more.
You know, if you go 70%, then you're going to end up at 80 probably.
Final question, Matt, if I may, before Tyler, where can our audience and people here learn more about you and your company, and how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so our website is just axephilly.com. On the homepage, there's like a little thing at the top if you want to subscribe to our blog. Every single Monday morning, we just put out like a little newsletter. It's not spammy at all. It's really straightforward. We just provide one weekly update on each project address that we're building per week. And we talk about, you know, it's a great way to learn the sequence of a job. You know, and by what I mean by that is like, you know, first is demo and clean out, and then you frame, and then you do plumbing, HVAC, electrical. Like we go through that every single week, and I'll talk about different, you know, adversities and stuff. So the website's cool. The blog and then Instagram is just Axe Philly as well. And we just hired a new team member to help us with the social media game. So hopefully you'll see
It's a game changer. You'll love it.
some cool stuff on there coming up. But yeah, I mean, we love to, Andrew even likes to talk way more than me. You know, if you guys want to meet him, he does like the underwriting and the financing models, managing our investors, acquisitions. He's that side, whereas I run the construction. So reach out anytime if you have technical questions. If it's something we've been through or we know, then we're happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you.
Tyler, it's Ryan Harsh.
What's up, dude?
man? Not much, dude. How about yourself?
Good. Twice in a month.
I was just gonna ask you where your other half is, man. We got to get him on here.
Yeah, he's probably looking at deals, doing something.
Good. Somebody's got to go get the deals, right?
Yeah.
Question for you about what are you guys doing mostly these days? You try like with easy permits and stuff. Have you found them harder to get? And are you able, you know, or you're just trying to limit your construction to stick in the easy permit so you don't have to go through the full permitting process, or what's your plans with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Very underrated. The easy permit thing, we're still going strong. You know, they've tweaked the requirements a little bit. So like nowadays, if we're not changing anything majorly, well, anything structurally, I'll say, if it's like a, you know, interior renovation, gut renovation, then you can just grab an engineer's letter. You know, they sign off that you're just doing stuff on the inside. And then you can get the permit in like a matter of days instead of like formal architect plans, which are costing more money. They're taking more time to put together. And then it's like a 20-day business day review with, you know, license and inspection minimum. And that's if they don't have any objections, which they always do. So you're more like 2 months, you know, to get those plans back. So we're definitely trying to stick with the easy permit where we can. One other trick, and again, if there's other markets on here, I wouldn't know. But for Philly, like going back to Sartain Street, which we just looked at, we did an easy permit, but the basement, when we discovered the pad issue, which trying to replace the pad, they now deem that as structural. So you can actually do like add-on permits to the easy permit. So we got the easy permit. We started right away. We started demo, clean out, framing upstairs. Meanwhile, the engineer put like a complimentary permit in for review that was being reviewed while we had already started working. And that was just for the purpose of replacing the pad on its own permit. So that was kind of a creative way to be efficient and keep progress going while we were waiting for a little permit. So if you have to like do something structural, like before they wouldn't let you swap stairs without a special permit. I think you can now, but like, you know, one-off things like that, you can sometimes just get working alongside an easy permit and not have to do the full plans.
Yeah, it's interesting, Tyler. I had a client who submitted architect plans with a deck and didn't realize they needed a special permit for the deck. So then revised the plans, submitted without the deck, approved, and then added the deck with the engineer, resubmitted. So there's ways to get around that without wasting time, for sure.
Totally.
One hack you guys I wanted to share about ARV, only because I get so much business through other agents' mistakes, i.e. expired and canceled listings who, people don't understand pricing. If you have a certain ARV in mind and you cannot find a single sale within a 1/10 of a mile radius, and you could go back 2 or 3 years, keeping in mind that a city block has about 4 taxable parcels. So a 1/10 mile radius is about 400 taxable parcels. If there's not a single sale, let alone 2, 3, or 4, or 5 or more to support that value, don't go and cherry pick, your comps based off of the zip code. I see so many agents get into trouble, which delights me because I get the listing when they mess up, and then, I get the sale and I get the client. But, I would strongly advise you, if you're not seeing sales close to that intended ARV within a really, really small radius, then that to me is a huge warning sign. That's what I have to share on this subject, you guys.
No, I
Tyler,
think
I got one more for you before we run. Where are you getting most of your deals from right now? Are you knocking on doors?
Ooh.
Are you doing mailers, realtors? Where are they coming from?
Yeah, so right now we're not even actively looking because we're just like our pipeline's so full and we're so overwhelmed. But when some deals are still coming to us, usually it's our own stuff. Like that is what has built our company. It's all direct to seller, mail and like calling systems we've set up, and Andrew handles all of the sourcing of deals and putting out the marketing, building the lists, based on different criteria and data that we find for the properties. But as of lately, we've had a couple deals come from agents like that are, you guys would probably have this one woman, for example, none of you have probably ever heard her name. She's like very just dialed in this little area of West Philly that we love, and that's been a great lead source for bringing us some deals because, we just did well on the first one. We were reliable. And so she has brought us some other things. So realtors haven't really had much luck on the MLS because, the market's just so hot. We're getting outpriced. But not really wholesalers either. I mean, that's just been crazy. So just be careful, for the newer investors too. Like prices are really, really high right now. So you got to be more conservative than ever.
That's what I was going to say. Just because there's multiple bids on a house doesn't mean it's a good one to buy. Sometimes it's best to just say no.
Yeah. And to Matt's point, don't try to find that one outlier ARV to support your pro forma, because if the market doesn't keep trending up, which it's not always going to, then you're going to get, burned pretty bad. So you got to be patient in the beginning. And I guess the biggest advice I have, for anyone that's newer is in the beginning, if you can team up with someone and find a way to bring value to them that has the experience you lack, it's a great way to learn and to limit your risk. If you can network with some guys in a market and you want to learn the construction and that's their specialty, see if you can bring a deal to the table and partner for equity or a profit share thing and just, find a way to get in that way.
I think that is the perfect way to end this. Matt, if you want to take us out and maybe we can do a little networking if people want to hang on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing that I'd add to this is when I'm writing offers for investors, a lot of times they'll be like, what should I offer? And my response is always the same. I don't know. I mean, I can inform an investor or a contractor, here is a value that I'm comfortable that the market will support 6 months from now. I don't know what you plan on doing. I don't know what your costs are. I don't know what you want your profit margin to be, right? I mean, some investors may have 20 projects going and they don't have the bandwidth, so they're going to want a much higher profit margin. Some investors may have nothing going on and they might accept a much lower profit margin just to get some income coming in. So, you know, I would recommend to any investors on here, you know, you figure out what you're comfortable making, let your agent, whoever's representing you, figure out what the market will support based off of the end product, and then you submit your best offer, and don't haggle over 5 or 10K and lose a deal because you're, you know, trying to be stingy. That's it.
I love that. Don't let perfection be the enemy
Don't
to
let
progress.
the greed seep in, you guys. Act like a business person.
All right, so Matt, why don't you, if you don't mind, just what's on the agenda for next month, a little different, and then we can all bid each other adieu.
Yeah, so next month we're going to do a grid happy hour. It will be on the third Thursday, April 21st from 6 to 8, location TBD. So we'll get working on that for you guys and make sure to give you plenty of notice so that you can get it on your calendar. We want to thank Connor from Washington Capital Partners for supporting us, Ryan Harsh for supporting us, Elaine, I saw her on here earlier from Keystone Title for supporting Grid Philly. And any other questions or comments, guys?
Chat is empty. We are good. Tyler, thank you again. Really appreciate your time. Happy St. Patrick's Day and March Madness to you all.
Thank you, Tyler. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See
Thank
you.
you all.